Sure, of course, Sloan, and thanks everyone. This was the last thing we wanted to happen. We were excited to talk to you today. Testing, testing, one, two, three. Can everyone hear us
Yep,
here?
they can hear you. So I
Okay.
don't know what it is on my end, but that's okay. It doesn't matter. They can hear you. So we're gonna do this darn thing.
Okay, let's do it. All right. Well, thanks everyone for your time. I know we're starting a little bit late, but we will get through this quickly, and I'll adjust my timeline accordingly. We're clearly in interesting times, and I've been a member of Washington Multifamily Housing Association for over 10 years, and Sloan is wonderful, and with her outreach, we happen to be talking about how are we faring during these times, and she knew a little bit about the fact that we've been in business for over 20 years, and although a lot of properties may not know that we are in disinfection, we very much are, and so we thought it would be a good topic to discuss today. So I thought we would just talk about the agenda, what we'll go through today. So in addition to cleaning versus disinfecting, we are really what is coronavirus, and to talk about what the villain is out there, the preventative steps of how we don't contract something that is the most highest contagious disease since the Spanish flu, the differentiating points between cleaning and disinfection, and then at the end, any questions. So, and so for full disclosure, in addition, this was before, we're running a little bit late, but I'm not a professional speaker. I am not a microbiologist, but I do know disinfection. I've been involved in disinfection first with bloodborne pathogens in the late 1980s, and understand the right ways to address enveloped and non-enveloped viruses in multiple environments. So, so why we're here, I think we know, but I'm just imagining 5 or 6 weeks ago when we think about the word corona. This is at least what I would think about. I would think about being on a beach. I know some Facebook posts or send a picture of your favorite beach and togetherness. And this is what I was dreaming about. But that is not where we're at today. Instead, we're talking about these little buggers that are for real and serious, and how they've changed our world as we know it. And so, I talked to I have younger boys, 9 and 3, and to determine what is coronavirus. I think this is the dreams that they have. I don't know about some of you or some of your families, but they aren't that large and they don't have teeth, but they do have crowns, and they are exceptionally good at penetrating cells, and through a process of an RNA process, they can infect us once they find a host very quickly. So, and in terms of how coronaviruses, they started in the 1960s, the common cold. Some of you have heard of SARS in 2003, MERS, which came from the Mediterranean, Saudi Arabia, actually. Those are, coronaviruses are evolving, and they're evolving in how quickly they jump from animals to humans, a process called zoonotic. And a lot of this starts in countries where they're eating wild animals and where there isn't always the proper sanitation, disinfection, and refrigeration. So, but I would have take more time to nerd out on you, but in the interest of time, I'll move on. So in terms of how they work, once either an enveloped or non-enveloped virus gets into your system, coronavirus is a enveloped virus, which actually are easier to kill. It's just the thing about coronavirus is that it is very contagious, and it doesn't take that much what they call virus buildup for it to be communicated onto from host to host. And this speaks a little bit to it here. We've got, you look at SARS and MERS to the right-hand corner of the graph, you can see how the fatality rates are so much higher. We have the influenza in between them. But the thing that's really interesting about COVID is how quickly it spreads from human to human, like wildfire. And when we talk about prevention, before we talk about disinfection, you know, we want to, I have a lot of questions. We do a lot of consultation with various organizations, be it hospitals, properties, restaurants, businesses of all types. And is the question that keeps coming up is, how long does this virus last? And there's a lot of debate between on surfaces, in the air. And the reality is, as far as microdroplets, I don't want to scare anyone, but it actually can last, microdroplets can be in the air for up to 3 hours. So now, to put you at ease a little bit, that isn't necessarily that those microdroplets are enough to create infection, but there is still a presence. If you go down the list there on different minerals, up to 4 hours, a cardboard package or box, up to a day, plastic more than that, and stainless steel surfaces. The cruise ship that originally had gotten the initial cases, it was far beyond that. It was up to a week that they had detected the virus healthy and able to infect a host. So, and on the right-hand corner there's clearly how this is contracted is by droplets of, you know, if someone sneezes. And so with that, I looked under several Google images of sneeze, and that was the cleanest one I could find. So I wanted to share context, but not gross everyone out. But at any rate, if you're really, really bored, I know there was some binge watching TV and you want to potentially get on the borderline of being grossed out, do some YouTube videos of sneezes. That'll really, that'll be interesting. All right, so on the prevention piece, some of this may be obvious, but I just think it's a good reminder because habitually this is something new to all of us, because we used to be able to grab a door handle or push a button on an elevator, but there are a number of high touch points that we used to not think about before. We've all seen, or many of us have seen, statistics of New York and why they're so incredibly high. And beyond urban density, it's because there were so many common touch points on buses, subways, etc. And a pathogen like COVID-19 takes advantage of that and spreads exponentially. Hence our pandemic today. So, I mean, I'm sure that most of us are on our phones an average of 10 minutes or so a day, but any keyboard, any phone, any surface is high contact, and we need to make sure that we're doing the right things, not to take someone's phone, hand someone our phone if we're not properly cleaning and disinfecting that surface. Shaking hands. It's cool to fist bump these days, elbow bump, or even a thumbs up wave from far away. We know that, but it's an old habit. Door handles, as I mentioned, elevators, you know, those buttons are generally big enough to use your elbow or a knuckle or something like that. And for goodness sake, we'll talk about masks before the conclusion of this. This might be a habit if you're tired and or weary to touch your eyes and face. That is something that, from a mask's perspective, there's debate on whether or not they're helpful or not. This part right here, to create a habit of not touching your face, is actually a very positive reason why mask is a good preventative measure. So clearly, this virus can be on anything and survive. This is a plastic light switch. It could last, based on statistics, up to 2 to 3 days. It's a long time. So, you know, best practices. We're going to talk about cleaning and disinfecting. Wash your hands, and please don't take shortcuts. I think we know that. And all soaps are good, but for those of you that want to take a little extra precaution, there are some really good antibacterial or antimicrobial soaps that do a great job of protecting your hands versus just the standard soaps. Hand sanitizer, we all know that, whether it's gel, whether it's alcohol. In truth, the CDC may not say this, but there is studies that show non-alcohol hand sanitizers that have a product called CDK with great efficacy. They can last on your hands and still make a big difference. So we know that the virus is transmitted through sneezing and droplets. Those are the, I didn't want to gross you all out with a, unless somebody emails at the end and really wants a video on sneezes that go out and micro droplets that are in the air for 3 hours. But if you're someone that is, has an allergy this time of year, or there's a family member or friend, wearing a mask or keeping your distance, even beyond the social distancing protocols, are very smart, because it's the #1 way that this can be transmitted is by the droplets. Should I wear a mask? So you see a couple homemade masks there in the left-hand corner where people are having fun. I thought I would add something a little bit whimsical. Those aren't going to be your most effective masks. This is a gas mask, clearly. So if you're looking for masks that are in global shortage, I wouldn't recommend this particular mask for the purpose we're talking about. That's a fun mask for those Aliens fans. This, on the other hand, is a mask that would be recommended. It's not a, many of you might know what an N95 mask is, which would be more appropriate for medical community first responders with a filter. However, a very good quality dust mask that can inhibit microdroplet particles is a good preventative if you're in public spaces, or if you yourself have allergies and might sneeze, or somebody nearby you may as well. This is an N95 mask, this gentleman here that has, I don't have hair any longer, but many years ago my hair looked a little bit like that. All right, now to the meat and potatoes, cleaning versus disinfecting. So I'm gonna go ahead and click this video, and it's going to talk about the differentiating points. So please stand by. It's about 5 minutes. Hi, everyone. My name is Mark Sims from Fikes, and today I'm going to talk to you about cleaning and disinfecting and why they're not the same. So at a really high level and simplicity, those claims out there where you can clean and disinfect all in one easy peasy step, not the case. When it comes to cleaning, that is a separate step that involves removing soils, debris, and grease, so the surface is clean. When it comes to disinfecting, on the other hand, you need to take the right product with the right active ingredient. And I know we're talking today about COVID-19. The EPA has a list of active ingredients in different products that can be approved. The product we're going to be using today is one of our products we have in-house, and the active ingredient is ammonium, quaternary-based ammonium chloride. It's a non-solvent. So what do I mean by that? Certain products out there have some solvents in them. Their pH is such where it could potentially discolor a surface. Even bleach that many of you might use, know that you definitely don't want to put bleach on certain surfaces for an extended period of time. We like to use and we like to encourage the use of water-based disinfectants because they're multi-purpose and essentially 99.9% water, but with the proper dilution, as long as you have 400 parts per million, which, for instance, with this particular concentrate, this little guy here actually can make 128 gallons of disinfectant. So incredibly effective, very cost effective. This is one product of others out there. And then for some of you that aren't sure about how you want to dilute, this was at 1 ounce per gallon. There's actually handy dandy, we have a disinfection kit where you just pop it in, have a little water, pop the sprayer top in, and you're good to go. And that's what we did today. So, all right, so we're not going to be talking so much about cleaning because I assume all of you on here are probably great at cleaning. You're probably a little bit more interested in disinfecting. So when it comes to disinfecting, the key is that you want to make sure you leave the surface wet. So somebody out there might think, well, I don't really want to get my keyboard wet or my phone wet or any electronics. So in that case, I'm using a microfiber here. You would just spray the product into the cloth surface and you would visibly wipe whatever surface. And the key is to not dry it. You want to put that product on, I'm going to use a phone here as an example, front and back. If you don't think you have enough disinfectant, just a couple more squirts, a little goes a long way. And you just apply that. And you give it, another key, contact time, dwell time. So you don't want to dry that surface, and that is where there gets to be confusion in the whole process is that you spray something on and you basically dry it all off. You're actually taking away the effectiveness of allowing that surface to wet dry. All surfaces with proper disinfectants need a wet dry time of as low as 5 minutes to as many as 10. So now this right here is a very easy, fairly rudimentary way to disinfect your own space. I'm actually going to ask Rory, who is one of our team leaders, to come in and show a process that for some of you who may have interest in understanding more advanced application methods, he has an electrostatic applicator. And why that is great is that it enables for there to be a positive and negative charge when you apply the disinfectant to any surface, so it attracts very quickly. It covers incredibly evenly, and then based on the electric charge, it actually helps with the residual and lasting ability of the product once applied. So I'm going to go ahead and let Rory just apply it here in just a few seconds to see. You see how it's misting that product and how it's covering. And so, great, thank you. And so what it does is you can actually adjust tips on any sort of applicator. You've probably seen scenarios where this has been on the news. Individuals that came out of certain countries from Wuhan, they actually used a hospital-grade disinfectant through electrostatic to disinfect them as they came off the plane. You've also probably seen scenarios where there's been foggers they've used in a number of, particularly Korea and Japan and parts of China. Fogging is a way to disinfect. The only thing I would encourage for those of you who are familiar with fogging, or maybe your facility service teams are able to fog, is that because of the aerializing of the product, you have it airborne for a tremendous period of time. You're using heat and pressure, and it drifts. So we found that just your standard disinfecting certain surfaces on your own and leaving them to wet dry, or if any of you have access to electrostatic methods to apply it, because the product will lay down within seconds, and as long as it's allowed to dwell for 10 minutes, and we generally tell everyone to leave the area for a minimum of 20 to 30 minutes, that area is covered, protected, and disinfected. So that's what we have today. If you have any questions beyond this webinar, happy to answer them, and just be consultative in this time. We're all in this together. Let's all flatten the curve. Thank you. All right. Well, I hope that was helpful. There was a couple key takeaways. I wanted to make sure today that everyone realized that despite the fact that COVID-19 doesn't have the fatality rates that some of the other SARS and MERS have, is it's highly contagious, and we're seeing those numbers. So be very, very careful. And to not contract it and to not spread it, prevention, both our shelter in home and being very mindful of personal protection and disinfection and keeping our hands clean is the key. And then if you have a disinfectant, whichever one you use, is to make sure that you don't put it on any particular surface and dry it right away. Please let it dwell. So with that, that's what I have. Are there any questions?
Yeah, Mark, there are some questions that came in. One is, what hand washing soap do you recommend? Do you have a recommendation of a particular soap that's best right now?
So great question. There are some really good soaps from Gojo that are great. They have a number of antibacterial soaps. There are also some other off-brand soaps. We have our brand of soap, an antimicrobial soap that is also an antimicrobial and antibacterial. It doesn't matter whether it's lotion or foam. Just look at that particular label. The label, there used to be a product called triclosan, which has been outlawed by the FDA. But there is a product called PCMX that should be contained in any soap you use, which is an active ingredient that is best practice.
Okay, so that's what we're looking for, is the PCMX.
PCMX, and I can send any information on that and maybe a couple recommended soaps if you'd like.
Okay, that's awesome. And then a question came as a biology question here. How does it live in the air for 3 hours? Wouldn't gravity drop it right away? I think they're talking about the droplets, like these airborne droplets. Yeah.
That's a great question. And I didn't want to gross everyone out with some of the video because we only had one video, but it is amazing. They've done they've done basically heat enhanced color video, and it is amazing how long those micro droplets last in the air. So that's its claim to be airborne, but in terms of the level that's remaining for those 3 hours, it's highly unlikely that that is enough to create infection on a host. But unlikely doesn't mean impossible. So that answered the question. Again, full disclosure, I'm not a microbiologist, but
yeah,
just in understanding it a bit, that's all the facts lead to that it has drift for that long.
And obviously not a chance that we want to take right now.
Right, exactly. I mean, why roll the dice?
Yeah. So a question that I have when thinking about our multifamily communities, since you guys do so much work there, when we talk about the spaces and places, even though our leasing offices are technically closed right now and things like that, what are the areas that we should still be really hyper vigilant about disinfecting? And then the second part of my question is, once we lift some of these restrictions, what and how often in those spaces should we be disinfecting or re-disinfecting? Because, you know, the governor said yesterday, this isn't a light switch, it's a dial. And so we'll be slowly opening, but as we do, how do we reduce the risk of contaminating or, you know, re-spreading these germs back out?
Great question. So the best practice of at least frequency would be a couple times a day minimum. And also in terms of just thinking about walking into an office setting, or I'm thinking of a gym or particular offices, any gathering space, those all need to be disinfected. And that's another reason why we always encourage anyone to find a water-based product, because in talking to a lot of teams that do disinfecting, there is very frequently scenarios where they shy away from disinfecting certain surfaces because they're afraid of actually harming the surface. When in this case, if I don't want to put it because it's going to ruin the finish on this non-porous surface, or I don't want to put it on that fabric, that could have literally been where that virus is waiting there for the host. So you need full coverage of any particular area that's treated.
Okay, great.
Did that answer your question, Sloan?
It did. So then in the spaces, when you think about the leasing offices, the community areas, the laundry facilities on some of these properties, like, I mean, what are the spaces when you say about twice a day, you know, what are, I'm thinking of the handrails on the, you know, going up and down, like, it just seems like a lot.
I think the best practice is that if you almost can't be too detailed and thorough. I know, for instance, we do some travel terminals, and we do every bench, every seat, every table, every chair, everything.
Here's a new question that came in. I've been spraying Lysol on the fabric. Is that recommended as well, or is that not really doing anything? So the product Lysol, I think is what they're asking, is that enough of a disinfectant on those cloth surfaces, like a couch or something like that?
I guess the question back would be how the Lysol aerosol, so they're spraying it, are they just spraying it to where, I guess I would ask, how damp is the surface when they spray that?
Okay.
If any disinfectant, and Lysol certainly is not a bad product, it's a bleach derivative, but any product that doesn't have sufficient dwell time, so if it's, for instance, just a quick spray and you're not getting enough coverage, then the key is coverage, the key is dwell time.
Okay. And I heard you earlier say minimum 5 minutes is what you want for that wet to dry time on a disinfecting space.
Minimum.
Okay.
You want it to be visibly, and if you're applying the product to something that's non-electronic, I mean, we do all types of touch screens and scenarios. But if it's a table, if it's a chair, if it's something that has no electronics, just put the right amount of, put ample amount of product and let it air dry.
Okay. Great. Let's see, there's another question here, I think. Oh, nope, that was that one. All right, do we have any other questions? Thank you, audience, for sticking with us. It looks like everybody that was on us when we got started rejoined us, so I'm glad we didn't miss you today. Any other questions for Mark? We will send a PDF of these slides out to everybody that registered for today's seminar. It's got Mark's contact information, so if you have questions for him and his team about anything, I know they'd be happy to answer that for you. Just a couple of announcements. We'll leave the questions open in case they come in, but as we're wrapping up, I want to thank Mark and his team for putting this together. They are, as you can imagine, incredibly busy right now, like so busy. So so taking the time to do this, I know was probably a little burdensome, so we appreciate that because this information is really helpful. Jackie, yeah, so he has a hyperlink in his PowerPoint to that video that he showed us. So you'll be able to just click on that from the PDF and open that video up. It looks like it's housed in YouTube, so it should be no problem. Thank you for that. Looking forward, yes, you're welcome. Thanks, Jackie. Looking forward to next week and our remaining or upcoming 6 Feet Apart webinars. I want to just remind you that on Tuesday, we have a really good one on virtual leasing. I was on a couple of calls this week with some students, and they said they were actually very busy this week and signed leases for June and July. So people are still looking to move, but we're doing it so differently. So we have a really great webinar on different ways you can virtual lease on Tuesday. That's with our friend Laura from Zumper. And then on Thursday, we have a virtual tapas and topics. And guess what the theme of that one is? Virtual leasing. And so they'll be giving you a little bit more on that. And I hear that there is a dress code for that tapas and topics. Since we're all missing our sports teams, you're supposed to wear the jersey or the gear of whatever team you're most missing watching right now. So join us for that on Thursday for Tapas and Topics. Again, both our 6 Feet Apart and our Tapas events are free for WIMFA members, so we encourage you to join us there. Mark, thank you again so much. And with that, we will wrap it up and let you all go. Watch for a follow-up email, which will have these slides, a quick survey. This survey is going to pop up when I shut this down, and that you can take as well. And have a great afternoon. Go enjoy the sunshine. Wash your hands.
Wash your hands.
Thanks, everyone.
In fact, yeah.